I hired a hitman to take out my daughter. I should have done it myself. I adore my husband, but there's something that effectively ruins our relationship. His daughter, Fair. I don't want to sound like I'm some evil human, but Fair was different from a normal girl. She spends most of her time in wilderness patches behind our estate, where she's taken up an extreme interest in traps, snares, nets, that sort of thing. Her father even bought her a hunting knife for Christmas, and the way she smiled with it was simply terrifying. I've tried to mention it to my spouse, but he seems determined to overlook any sign of his daughter's abnormality. He's also determined to ignore the rotting smell that seems to emanate from her room, and the reports of missing cats in the local neighborhood. I don't want to rock the boat, but I'm convinced it was her. And last week I think I finally had all my subconscious suspicions confirmed. It started with my husband leaving for a business trip, meaning I was alone with Fair at the house. Luckily for me, work usually meant that I always arrived home late, so it's not like we've had to eat together and play happy families or anything. We both keep to ourselves, but any illusion of normalcy shattered last Friday. After forgetting some files at home, I went back to retrieve them, assuming Fair would be at school. However, as I walked into the house, a thick, coppery stench seemed to hang in the air. Had something died in the vents? But as I stepped into the kitchen, I saw it. The wide windows and countertops covered in what looked like a heaving mass of fur. Fur and blood. My ears gradually focused, and I could hear a horrific noise. It was someone chewing. Fair stood in the center of the room, face buried in the stomach of a fuzzy kitten. My brain tried to translate it as something sweet, a cuddly gesture of affection perhaps. But as my stepdaughter raised her head, I saw blood smeared over her face, trickling down her neck onto her neat little blouse. I took 2 steps back, opened the door, quietly left the house and drove to a nearby viewpoint. I inhaled. I stepped out of the car. I exhaled. I vomited. I'd had enough. I reached for my phone. Luckily, I had memorized the phone number, and besides, I was already a respected client of theirs. In the corporate kingdom, it always helps to know a hitman. I waited a week. Usually my agents work extremely quickly, so I expected she would be dead by then. But as I woke up this morning to go to work, I found something lying outside my bedroom door. A human heart, with a bloodied Polaroid picture lying next to it. My heart pounded in my chest as I picked up the Polaroid picture. The man in the photograph was none other than the hitman I had hired to take care of Fair. He was the one who was supposed to rid us of this nightmare, yet somehow, he ended up dead. My agents were the highest targets, yet he couldn't get past this girl. "You shouldn't have done that," whispered the demonic child at the bottom of the stairs. My blood ran cold as pure adrenaline took over my body. I rushed straight into my room as she looked up at me with her familiar sinister grin. I locked myself in my room for that entire week, with the smell of blood slowly getting stronger. I don't know why she didn't force the door down. If she was able to take down my hitman, she should be able to kill me in an instant. But she didn't. But I don't think this was for good reason. I was being tormented in that room. Every day she would start singing outside my room, which throughout the week progressed to an ear-piercing screeching sound. My ears started to hurt more and more to the point where it felt like one of my eardrums had burst. Everything was becoming muffled and I started bleeding from my ears. I eventually came to my senses, deaf in both ears and with blood leaking down my neck. I realized that I needed to leave, and leave as quickly as possible. If my hitman couldn't take her out, I would need to do it myself. But being stuck in that room slowly dying would get me nowhere. I could still feel vague thumping from downstairs. It's an old house, and you can feel every movement shake through the foundations. So I knew I was being ignored, right then at least. I shuffled over to the bedroom window, which was thankfully already open. Closed windows create stuffy rooms, so I make it a habit to keep them open. I managed to slowly make my way down the outside wall while hearing a constant thumping within the house. Before I could take the time to properly process my own actions, I'd started the car and backed out of my driveway. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror before I turned the corner at the end of our street was a small white figure with dark hair crouched on the pavement outside our home. Red soaked the dress she wore, and despite my deafness, I'm sure I could hear her rage. My stepdaughter clearly isn't human. Her hair was very, very dark. It doesn't seem to pick up light. I've never seen it shine. But her mouth is what freaks me out the most. Her lips are crusty, in the scabbed old blood kind of way. They're deep red, and I don't think it's lipstick. I've never actually been in her room. I generally try to avoid encroaching on her territory, but she doesn't strike me as the makeup type. They also shine, permanently, like a fresh wound. She had transformed into this monster. This isn't what she normally looks like. Just the fact she was able to kill hired professionals makes her completely inhumane. No young, unaware human should be able to do that. I didn't want any more lives to be taken, so that was when I decided it was up to me. I tried calling my husband, but he wasn't picking up. Something was going on between the two of them. I needed to find out who the hell my stepdaughter and my husband were. Luckily, I have a lot of connections, as well as a chain of people who owed me favors, including people that work in legal fields with extensive records and IDs for just about everyone in the US. But after asking them to check for Fair, no records existed whatsoever. It was either a fake name or she isn't human, but I imagine it's both. As for my husband, he's registered but has no child or ex-wife. However, there was a very interesting series of articles regarding a missing family. A couple and their young daughter vanished from their home, leaving no traces. After a 3-week search and numerous appeals, the wife's body was found in the center of a nearby forest, with her heart torn out. The official explanation was that the husband murdered his wife and child, which is an extremely weak explanation to close the case. However, the case is considered closed, despite the fact that the culprit was never caught.